when it comes to education in general in a lot of the developing countries. So even in Bangladesh, generally, education is paid for. You have to pay for education. And with Bangladesh being one of the highest, most populated countries in the world, there aren't enough resources even for the government to be able to give back to their people. And the way I see it is with education, it's all about accessibility, and education kind of creates the life cycle, our financial life cycle, where you live and where the way you learn and where you work. It creates the entire ecosystem of what our life is set to be.
Welcome to Dream Pushers. We connect you with Web3's vanguard, creators and entrepreneurs shaping the future. Hosted by Chris Jonu and presented by Draper University.
I want to quickly mention that none of this is investment advice or financial advice, trading advice, or any sort of advice. And we do not recommend any cryptocurrency or investing in any projects. We're just showcasing the stories of founders. Welcome back. This is Chris Jonu, and today we have a special guest in May Mahboob, and she is the founder of MBD Financials. The MBD stands for Metaverse Business District. She is an incredible operator, top 100 women of the future, metaverse warrior, public speaker, and a global advocate for financial inclusion. And that's the basis of MBD Financials. She's created a metaverse where you can come and learn about trading digital assets and real estate, selling them NFTs and buying NFTs and investment opportunities. So really cool way to help educate people. And the kind of tagline is a decentralized district that empowers individuals to create their own financial ecosystem. And I think it's really a great way for people to learn. This grand vision that's raised a bunch of cash and got a lot of attention does come to fruition the way she's planning, because it's going to be a great asset to all of us. I hope you enjoy her story.
Hey, May, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, very well. Thank you for jumping on. I'm super interested to talk about your projects, but can I go back a little bit? Before we get into MBD and Techways, I'd love to just hear a little bit about you and give the audience a little bit of context. And I go quite far back. I usually start with the question, was there a mother or father that's an entrepreneur? And if that's not the case, is there a way that you could perhaps pinpoint that first time you were being entrepreneurial?
Of course. So my parents actually, I was originally born in a small country called Bangladesh in Southeast Asia, right next to India. My parents relocated here when I was very young. So grew up in New York City and then relocated to Texas back in 2000. So currently in Dallas, Texas. But when it comes to entrepreneurial, I would say probably back in elementary school, actually, they were different. It's funny that you say that, because one of the things that we used to do was where people wouldn't do their homework, I created this entire group where I could assist them in homework, but in return, they actually paid for the service in a way. And
Nice.
It was through gathering all of the money. And it was a certain like allowance and things like that. But then I didn't use the money for toys and other things that we wanted to use. So instead, I took the money and actually donated to a group of homeless people that used to sit right by our school for meals. So that's how the whole entrepreneurial spirit kind of started.
Well, entrepreneurial and social impact.
Absolutely.
Awesome, mate. That's awesome. And so Texas, tell me about that. University in Texas and
so I finished off high school, moved here my sophomore year of high school, and it was a huge major change to come from New York City directly to Texas without visiting whatsoever. My dad was in the IT industry, so I've always been around technology, and finished off high school here, went to university here, University of North Texas, and I actually graduated and double majored in communications as well as broadcasting journalism, which is far from what I'm currently doing. But everyone says that once you live in Texas, you don't want to live anywhere else. And that's become very true. Even for work, I've actually lived in Singapore for a few years, but Texas has always I've somehow found my way back to Texas every single time.
Nice. And just going to school there, I'm just thinking, so did you walk in with that New York swagger?
Actually was the nerdy kid, so I did not. But I can tell you, before even moving here, when my dad actually told us that we were moving to Texas, I was thinking I was going to have to ride horses to school, and it was going to be like cowboys. Yeah, the typical, what you used to think of like Texas as, right? But when I walked in, it was the kind of like the opposite, where people were asking me, have you seen shooting? Have you seen like murders happen in front of you? And it was the complete opposite of what I was expecting. And that's not the type of, I grew up in a community where it was, I grew up in Queens, Astoria, where it was like majority Greeks. So it was the old, it was people that were sitting on their porch, and the community kind of raised you, and you didn't have to worry about kidnapping and any of that, even in New York, growing up in the city. So it was a complete different lifestyle than what other people imagine growing up in New York would be like.
Very cool. And then, so yeah, how do you make the shift from, broadcast journalism? So you had like aspirations of being on television, and then the entrepreneur bug hit you. Can you just, explain that bit?
So Diane Sawyer, I've always looked up to Diane Sawyer ever since I was a kid. I used to watch Good Morning America. It's probably because my dad used to watch it in the morning, and we only had one TV in the living room, so we didn't have a choice. But I've always admired her, and the fact that how your voice could be used to really become the voice for people that really don't have a voice, and to be able to share so much more and make an impact just through not necessarily just reading the news, but to be able to tell other people's story and be able to become that voice for other individuals to bring it alive. So I've always had an interest in finding new and to be able to make a difference one way or another. That's how I went into television. But I did absolutely nothing with that degree, because ended up just going a complete different route after graduating.
Can you go through that story? I'm curious as to hear like how it evolved. I can see a bit of an inkling in the storytelling component, that's for sure. But how did the journey kind of unfold after that?
Of course. So as I was going to school, one of the things that we did is I didn't want to, of course, while I was going to school, I worked for a company called Estee Lauder, and it was a college part-time job that I wanted to do, but at the same time be able to pay for my own tuition in college. I didn't want to put too much burden on my parents. And as I was doing that, I've always given, if I take anything on, I always give 150% in anything that I'm doing. So one of the things that they offered is tuition reimbursement if you worked full time and you were still able to keep grades B and above, which was tough, and not many could actually do it. But I started working full time and still going to school full time, getting good grades, and Estee Lauder technically reimbursed me and paid for all of my tuition. But while working, I kept being promoted almost like every 6 months into management position, and then upper management, and regional training and development. And by the time I graduated, I was managing a team of over 65 individuals, and I was making way more than what I would make even just starting out, without any college debt whatsoever. So I realized that this is what I'm really good at when it comes to the business aspect and building a brand and the entrepreneurial side of it. So I continued my career in business development and building a brand.
And fast forwarding to Techways, right? How does this come about? Was this just like trying something completely new, or you just saw like a trend in the marketplace? How did that all come about?
Of course. So through my journey, I actually became a partner with a family member of mine. It's called Lush Cosmetics. That took me to Singapore. So we took the brand to Singapore and it's a ethically sourced handmade cosmetics. So once taking the brand to Singapore, what we realized is, of course, it's building it from bare scratch. And I got involved heavily in many social impact causes because it is an activist brand. So they're involved in various segments, whether it's ethically sourcing ingredients or fighting against animal cruelty or specific towards education in various sectors. That's where I actually met my business partner, who was also working with specifically, he's a renowned author, but he has multiple companies in the technology industry. Virtual reality, working with blockchain, robotics, AI, machine learning. So I started getting really started getting into the crypto industry, blockchain industry. And of course, I'm a firm believer on you could teach yourself anything and become an expert in anything based off of the vast amount of knowledge that's out there and accessibility to these resources. So I'm self-taught in many areas. And I started learning more, getting into the technology and the accessibility piece, especially coming from more of a social impact area. So utilizing virtual reality technology in something called super learning, where the US Navy SEALs used it to retain and learn anywhere between 10 to 25 times faster. So we started digging into language learning, and we ended up creating this organization where we wanted to get into the education sector and learning more about digital currency, especially because I started getting into cryptocurrency back in 2014. And what I realized is there's so much information out there and then you're bombarded with it. So I throw these ideas at him and I was just like, hey, you know what we really need? We need some sort of a software where we're utilizing the super learning, and at the same time with AI integration, it can only give you information that you only need. So you're able to learn at a certain level. And we started off with that piece of it and continued on and getting into more of being able to see through someone else's eyes in the AR industry and just simplifying processes in general.
So first, Lush Cosmetics, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to skip over it at all. I'm calling from Melbourne, Australia. They're everywhere here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's big. And then, so Techways, right? Like, can you just explain some of the other products, particularly from the education space? Can you just dig a little bit deeper into that? You know, I'm learning 25% faster and how that, like the practical application beyond, you know, Navy SEAL training, although I'm also interested to hear how that kind of works. Could be implemented, in today's world?
Of course. So one of the organizations, one of the companies that we've partnered with is called True Rest Float Spa. They're everywhere within the United States. They're one of the largest franchised float pods. If you've seen the float pods, it's filled with over 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt, and you kind of float in a zero gravity space. And it's actually supposed to help with as far as rebalancing your mental state, as well as any type of aches in muscles and things like that. So one of the things that we took was, so with the way Navy SEALs back in the 90s utilized this technology is they went into a submerged tank and they actually eliminated certain senses and utilized auditory as well as visualization and the sensory uses in order to learn a new language in 6 months. So the US Navy SEALs, as well as several CIA agents, were able to learn a new language fluently in 6 months. So fast forward to 2020-ish, what we were able to do is take a lot of the research that was done by Harvard Studies as well. And if we were to take those specific contents in a zero gravity setting, you're fully submerged in the tank with Epsom salt, of course, and you take that content and you add visualization to it, as well as auditory, and you eliminate certain senses. At the same time, you use binaural beats, where individuals at that deep it's almost like a meditation stage where your brain retains subconsciously that information anywhere between 10 to 25 times faster. So through studies, what we've learned is now an individual can actually become fluent in anywhere up to 6 weeks in a new language based off of the number of sessions that you're taking. So we currently started with a lot of meditation content and visualization for people with depression, and especially during COVID isolation and getting back into things. And now we're moving on to actual learning contents.
That's incredible. And so obviously this business must be super exciting for you, and just so that just continues to evolve. Seems like it'll be lots of use cases. I mean, the language alone must be a massive market.
Absolutely. I think language is the barrier to communications in general, to be able to create this society where everyone's able to learn from each other. So if we were somehow able to simplify the process or eliminate the learning process to where every individual has the opportunity to learn based off of your capabilities and how you retain that information, I think that could simplify a lot of things.
Absolutely. So by eliminating some of the senses, i.e. I'm floating and so I'm not thinking about touch so much, then I can just I'm thinking about less. My whole body's thinking about less, so I can focus more on the content. I'm probably oversimplifying it, but do I kind of get it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's similar when you go into REM sleep and you're getting that level of you're actually complete, your mind is at ease and your body is completely relaxed to where you're able to understand certain content or concepts that's given to you. It's almost like your subconscious mind retains that information. So there's 3 various areas that it focuses on. Of course, there's conscious, your subconscious, and then there's a level which is called superconscious. And that's a mix of your subconscious as well as your conscious state of mind. And it retains and stores a lot of that information, and it's readily available for use when it comes up. So a lot of times you don't even realize, even if you're sleeping, that's where a whole entire research went into sleep learning, where you listen to that content over and over again. And while you're in REM sleep, you retain a lot of that information. So with studies, there's been multiple studies that have shown that, you might not even remember learning about a certain subject, but as the conversation carries on and you pull a lot of the facts from what you've actually retained while you were learning, while you were sleeping in that relaxed REM stage.
And so is this your secret to running 2 major companies, May?
Well, I actually have a huge fascination with language learning. And like I said, I enjoy learning. It's, even as a kid, people used to think I was really weird because I tell them like I PhD in anything that you could tell me. And it's based off of, oh yeah, I went to Google University and I have my PhD in this or in that. And I personally I know how to speak 6 languages. So
wow.
It's one of those, even I have a 6-year-old and I'm teaching him several things. I use that concept with him as well. And he's currently on 3 languages fluently.
Amazing. And so just switching gears for a minute into MBD Financials. Can you explain how that kind of came about? I'd love to hear the backstory on the Metaverse Financial District.
Of course. So through all of this, as with Lush being a very activist organization, I've done a lot of work and continue to do work with specifically around women and children, and when it comes to education in general. in a lot of the developing countries. So even in Bangladesh, generally, education is paid for. You have to pay for education. And with Bangladesh being one of the highest, most populated countries in the world, there aren't enough resources, even for the government, to be able to give back to their people. And the way I see it is with education, it's all about accessibility, and education kind of creates the life cycle, our financial life cycle, or where you live and the way you learn or where you work. It creates the entire ecosystem of what our life is set to be. And what we've realized is it's not just education, it's all about providing accessibility through technology. And we have such advanced technology in it. And, it circulates back into what you call first world resources. And even with the funding, what we've realized is if we had a way, not just in education in general, a way to provide that accessibility to individuals all across the globe, then that's a way where we will ultimately become the disruptor of what we call inherited poverty. So with the metaverse, as it started getting popular, and this is a project that through virtual reality and AR, we've kind of been working on and was going to become a part of Techways XR, but we were creating a closed environment, and then Meta came out and announced Metaverse and open environment, open worlds. The main concept of the project is to enable and empower every individual with the opportunity to control their entire financial freedom. And of course, via digital cross-chain metaverse experience. So where we are able to provide that ecosystem in a financial/business district where individual can learn, earn, at the same time receive proper financial education to create their own life ecosystem of their financial ecosystem, their lifestyle. So they're able to empower themselves to break out of the cycle of inherited poverty.
It's funny because I've had a few of these conversations, with particularly maybe people that are more creative, right? I guess myself included, and really kind of had a lack of financial knowledge, it's flagging that I do have a business degree, but not something that I was super interested in, right? But the fact that DeFi and blockchain and even NFTs, I guess, to a degree, has inspired people to learn about the financial world where they otherwise wouldn't, just because of the tech that exists. So I imagine that this even takes the consumer further in this completely immersive experience, correct?
Absolutely. But it doesn't necessarily have to be immersive, because when you think about accessibility, how many individuals will really carry around VR headset in a developing country, right? So the main goal is to make it accessibility agnostic. So if you want an immersive experience, you're able to have that. But at the same time, if you're not in a geographical area where, you have the resources to be able to have that experience, then you can just access it via cell phone. Almost every individual globally has access to a cell phone in many areas. And that's one of the main areas that we focused on, is accessibility to this resource needs to be very agnostic.
Got it. And can you just go through, is this for children, for teenagers? Can I just kind of enter where I need to, and then what kind of learning am I getting? Is it, so it sounds gamified?
Of course. So the entire concept of the business district is that throughout our roadmap, we don't want to go from 0 to 100 and introduce this immersive business district where we expect everybody to come in and utilize all of the resources. So there's a slow process, and we see it as a learning process as well. Our targeted market, our user base needs to be not just the current digital currency users or individuals who are very tech savvy, because then we still close up the accessibility and use cases back to individuals who have the resources to be able to access it. So the goal is to be able to, for example, we are actually, our first deliverable, we're launching in about by the first week of August or second week latest, is a cross-chain NFT marketplace. And the goal of this NFT marketplace is where individuals are able to create their own assets, digital assets based off of their skill sets. So when you think about, in general, the industry as a whole, when it comes to tech industry or even recruiting and HR, a lot of it is actually outsourced. A lot of the development work is outsourced currently. And these are individuals who you might find, like, for example, Upworks or Fiverr, and they take a huge cut out of people's work. And at the same time, there's certain people that comment on it or rate it, but you can't really see the work. You don't know as far as whether they're good at what they're doing or what their level of skill set is. Here's a platform where individuals can actually create their own store, as you like to call it. It's the e-commerce store where they can create NFTs based off of their skill set. So if I'm a financial educator, each NFT could be specific courses or education pieces where it's minted and kept for future utilities behind it. You're able to rate the work, and certain percentage of that, of course, the revenue model, you're able to customize the revenue model, and it continues onwards as we expand to the next platform that will launch, which is the DeFi platform. So it'll all have utilities once we get to the business district, where every individual actually knows how to use each one of our solutions that we have to offer, one of our protocol, but we see it as a marketplace. And how the social impact piece actually ties into this is via resources that we have, which is like VR technology or even a cell phone and the entire language translation. We will be implementing live language translation, voice to text or text to text, where individuals can break down that communication barrier. So for example, you're a software developer in Australia and you want to be able to help an individual in Africa and teach them your skill set. And that person, as they're learning, it's gamification. So the more they level up, they're receiving these NFTs as certifications. And once they've completed their certification, and of course, they're earning while they're learning, so they can provide for the family in the meantime. And so if they were working for $5, some people earn $5 a week. At the same time, they're earning at the same currency, which is, of course, our native token, MBD, while they're earning. And once they've completed their skill set, once they've certified in that area and have reached a certain certification, they're able to work for any of the organization or businesses that will be in our financial district. So that allows individuals to be able to, or create, let's say they don't want to work for someone else, they can create their own store per se there and to be able to offer their services there. That could be minted. People could actually see their work. It gets passed on and they're building a brand for themselves. And of course, the person that's teaching also earns what we call karma tokens. And that also has utilities, of course, behind it, which can be traded for MBD tokens, or it ties into an entire reward structure for organizations that are within our business district.
Very cool. Very cool. And as you're saying this, I saw this product the other day that was almost, I think social graph is the term, where it's now, I have a profile, kind of ERC tokens, or like my wallet address can kind of track what I'm doing on each of these websites. And so I have my avatar, which could be an NFT, then some of the NFTs I have, some of the investments I've made that are kind of public because people can figure out what tokens I'm holding or whatever. In this instance, we're talking about my credentials, which it seems to be missing, right? So you've got this giant, I guess, kind of the CV at some point, usually earlier in our career, kind of eliminates any fraud that when people, I guess, take it to an extreme with jobs and stuff. But how do we prevent like being a walking CV, if you know what I mean?
Of course, that's where a lot of the privacy things come in. So with us being marketing as almost like a marketplace, we don't want to be the creators of everything. That will really hinder our scalability and how fast we would like to scale and the reach that we could have. So the goal is, of course, when it comes to KYC, there's a project that I'm currently speaking with where with KYC implementation, where it becomes a digital identity. It's almost like Face ID. So if we want to reach more of at a refugees or individuals without digital identities, we're able to do that. And of course, integrating a crypto vault at the same time where you could keep a lot of those confidential information in the vault and be able to provide that when necessary. So we're also looking at part of our DeFi platform solution is the fact that how do you build credit in the metaverse and be able to, of course, when you look into flash loan a lot of these loan protocols and the assets that's required, a lot of times it's 120%. So what else can you create as assets to be able to take loans or be able to micro lending and of course empower a lot of digital organizations to come up? As you say, building a store, well, how can this individual, based off of everything they've learned and they've been able to raise capital almost and have investors, local investors, raise capital via NFT on this platform. And now how do we empower them in general to be able to take their so of course the financial education comes in. And when you look at assets, well, can a lot of your skill sets be utilized as assets and as almost the trust base? One area that was a huge influence is a lot of countries in Asia where if an individual's worked for an organization for, let's say, 15, 20 years, and here comes, they receive monthly salary. And one of the person that I was speaking with, he needed a certain amount of funds to, of course, for his daughter's wedding. And what they do is they go ask for a loan from the organization that they work for. And a lot of the times they actually front the salary, future salary, or give a loan and they deduct it based off from the salary that's given every month to be able to have that money up front without having to go to a bank. And of course, because a bank would decline them, they don't make enough. And it's all built on that trust level and the amount of time you've invested into a company. So if you take a concept like that and based off of all of your trades, all of your loans, and you're able to put all of that information into a vault and be able to show that almost as your credit score in the metaverse and be able to borrow against it and be able to, of course, have those customized smart contract payment plans and various things where individuals can create that financial stability, or whether it's to support a business or whether it's to start entrepreneurship. So I think having those utilities of so many different projects, having so many solutions, combining it into one place with unique products where people could pick and choose, and it's fully decentralized on the way you want to share the data that you carry with you.
Yeah, amazing. Love it. Love that story too, right? I'm just curious. Yeah, I guess the question was around, yeah, I mean, you're talking about social impact, you're talking about trust there. And it sounds like you're trying to solve this too, is that we're not as humans, we're kind of multidimensional. I hope it doesn't get lost with this page that has all these badges, and then, which is kind of not too dissimilar from the CV, I guess, in the first place, and how do we ensure the wonderful things that we're doing, or the human element is right there next to education and the financial certificate I got and all that, right?
Absolutely. And the fact that I think financial education is so important. And it's even in the schooling system, I think it should be provided at a much earlier stage than we are right now. You don't really get to understand what credit is. And now people could actually apply for credit cards after 18, right? But how do you support the payments and how do you really, you're borrowing against it. And what are you borrowing against? And creating that ecosystem of, okay, this is how, if I invest properly, whether you have $10 or 10 million, how can I get a return and how else can I get a return based off of that? I think that's really important because at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, poverty exists in every single country, even in the US. It's based off of course, perception in the country you're living in, but poverty to someone in the US isn't the same level of its wealth in a developing country. So the goal is to be able to provide resources to individuals to make and at the same time teach them regarding all of the solutions that's out there and have them make those choices for their financial ecosystem. So I think education will play a huge role in scalability as well, because not everybody understands digital currency. Not everybody is clear in regards to, I mean, my sister is a literal scientist. You know, she's in the healthcare industry. She's part of cancer research and several things like that. But the moment I sit down and start having a conversation about digital currency and cryptocurrency and the metaverse and, you know, how the blockchain and everything that's changing and a lot of these terms, she gets overwhelmed and she's like, okay, this is way above my head. And I think that's the general public. So simplifying the processes and bringing it to real world use cases and tying it together to provide such a simple solution where it's one economy and where everyone speaks the same language technically, and it's a way to give back. And you're earning, and of course the reward system ties in and organizations get really involved, and it jumpstarts this economy that's self-sustainable. And that's the way I like to see it, because I think even during COVID, as we were stuck at home, I know for myself, it made me reflect on a lot of things that are really important in life and the impact we're leaving behind, even for the next generation. So here's this technology that we have that could really help a lot of individuals across the globe if they only had accessibility to it. And of course, the education behind it to be able to learn what it is and utilize it, I think we'll tap into a lot more brighter minds than that's currently there.
Absolutely. May, that is awesome. I'm thinking about like even just, you know, first world countries too. It's like, we don't really learn about money. It's kind of taboo to talk about making money and all that kind of stuff. We just had to figure it out on our own. I have a business degree, which is a shame. And so I really love what you're doing and the global nature of it. And if you can execute half of it, it's going to be incredible. What is the kind of call to action from the audience? How can people get involved and help you bring the project to life?
Of course, help us share our project, join our social media platforms, invest into it. The more individuals that get involved, the bigger the communities get, right? The more people that know about our project, the larger the community, the bigger the impact. And of course, it's the project's built on the foundational principle that every single person has a right to own their success and a right to control their own outcomes. And our goal is that we'll deliver these rights and opportunities in our very unique photorealistic Metaverse Business District where dreams can actually become a reality. One thing I really live by, and I always share this with anybody that I meet, is the fact that each one of us are able to make an impact regardless of the size, right? So whether it's by helping one person or giving information or the way, you never know the impact that you've made until you see it with a broad, larger picture. And there are so many problems in the world that we wait for someone else to solve. But if each individual, based off of their skill set, were to make that one small impact, regardless of the size, then imagine the impact we'll be able to make. Because at the end of the day, we can wait for someone else, or we can step up and just take that one step forward towards a better future for all. Because if not us, then who?
Awesome. Thank you so much, May, and thanks for bearing with me on my stupid finance questions. Obviously, I needed this product when I was young as well. Love what you're doing, and thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate you having me.
No worries.
Thank you for joining Dream Pushers. Inspired, subscribe and share. With dedication, craft your legacy. Push boundaries.